So with all the heat waves this summer, I felt like it was a fitting time to talk about the ultimate heat wave movie. And quite possibly the sweatiest movie ever made. And it's also one that doesn't get talked about as much as it should. It's also the earliest buddy cop movie that I really know of, but most importantly, it's directed by the legendary Akira Kurosawa. And that's his 1949 film noir, Stray Dog. So recently I picked up the new BFI Blu-ray release of Stray Dog, and it finally has its much needed HD treatment. There's still no word on whether or not Criterion will release one, but Stray Dog itself is really interesting because when we think about director Akira Kurosawa, we typically think of samurai films. You know, his earlier works like Rashomon, also Yojimbo, Seven Samurai. But the great thing about Kurosawa is he was a very diverse filmmaker. You know, he didn't just stick to one genre. He really did them all. And interestingly, he directed 4 noir films, and this is during his post-war era of Japan. And just when watching Stray Dog now, you can see a lot of influence beyond just Japan. Both Hong Kong and South Korean cinema definitely owe a lot to it, and just mainly for its unique mixture of both comedy and crime stories. American noir at the time was very restrained by morals of crime can't pay and that police can't really be mocked.
I'll remember your face.
I'll try to forget yours.
But Japanese cinema really had no such restraints. As a result, Stray Dog feels really ahead of its time, especially just compared to the noir of the States in the 1940s. The film itself follows the character of Murakami, played by a very young Toshiro Mifune. And his character is a newbie in the homicide division of the Tokyo Police Department. And unfortunately, he's already messed up big time. And that's because he gets his gun stolen while he's riding on this really crowded trolley as he's going to work. And when he finds out what happens, he immediately just panics, and then he reports it to his superior officer. And he pretty much just tells him to do whatever he can to get it back. You know, fix it yourself basically, which is definitely nicer than just being fired.
You got a minute?
I wouldn't give you the skin off a grape.
So we just watch him as he's investigating everyone around him to find out who stole it. And we're just on this journey with him as he's playing detective work, as he just goes through the underworld of Tokyo. You know, just discovering a black market of illegal weapons being sold daily. Unfortunately though, every lead he comes across, he gets nowhere. And meanwhile, he's just finding out that his gun continues to be used by someone who's committing homicide.
Would you kill me, Rocky? Wouldn't you?
And so soon he partners up with a veteran detective named Sato. And he's played by the great Takashi Shimura. And he's just a lot more experienced than Murakami, so he's able to just turn up some viable leads. And so the film pans out with the two of them just doing their detective work, but there's sort of this metaphorical clock that's just ticking. You know, more and more people keep getting killed by his gun. So it's really just a highly engaging detective story. So the heat is no doubt the most notable aspect of Stray Dog. And Kurosawa is no stranger to using weather and nature as a driving force in his movies. In fact, I don't know of any other directors that do this, at least not on the level that he does. And it's one of the many reasons I love his film so much. You can never forget the rain and mud in the iconic final battle scene of Seven Samurai. Or even the omnipresent fog in Drone of Blood. The winds of Yojimbo. You know, every film has something. But his use of weather isn't just a simple trick. Yes, it does help to intensify the action and atmosphere, but it also reflects the psychological and emotional states of his characters. And when you just look at the opening shot of the film, it's just a close-up of a panting dog, and it achieves what it sets out to do. You know, every dog owner knows that just the sight of your dog panting will start to make you feel hot. And you could just feel this hot summer day from this simple shot. And right from the opening, you know, the film just immediately takes off. Right after the opening scene, we find out that a crime has been committed. We find out what Murakami lost and who he is. And you're just instantly drawn into this story. You know, a lot of films can learn something from this. And Murakami losing his gun and having to search through the underworld of the slums of Tokyo, I always kind of view that as him having to journey through hell itself. You know, him full of guilt, suffering from the heat, exhausted, and the close-up shots of his legs show that he still continues to journey on. And actually, the film Bicycle Thieves had a pretty similar plot, just coming out a year before Stray Dog. And this is where a poor father loses his bicycle that he needs for his job. You know, it's essential. And the search takes him on a journey through the poor streets of post-war Italian society. So, you know, very similar to Stray Dog. Both have to do with the chaoticness of post-war. And I find that every film Kurosawa makes, he has at least one iconic shot. You know, at least. And with Stray Dog, it's the way heat is shown visually. How it just permeates throughout every scene and every character interaction. People constantly waving fans, you know, wiping sweat. Both inside and outside, there's never an escape or relief from the heat that plagues everyone. And the film just perfectly captures that unbearable heat we've all felt on just a summer day. It just does it so well. And again, this is a very sweaty movie. You know, you see buckets of sweat dripping off of the characters, ceiling fans just spinning pointlessly, and really heat itself is a character in this film, representing the chaos of post-war life in Japan. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, it just all erupts in this massive rainstorm. And we all know by now Kurosawa just loves rain. And just seeing that rain just turn to steam the next morning. The camera really just moves through the environment with ease. Kurosawa knows when to let the shot wander, and then when to tighten it up and rein things in. And just a moment when Murakami comes across the possessor of his gun, this is really a moment of peak cinematography. A series of quick cuts with everything just snapping into the frame. And you could just feel the adrenaline from Mifune when he realizes who he's sitting across. And another key aspect is the chance to see both Shimura and Mifune teaming up. These are the two legends of Kurosawa films. And it's also quite possibly the best buddy cop couple. But the two of them really are opposites. And this is the true soul of Stray Dog, the interplay of opposites. We have the ever desperate and ever sweating young detective Murakami, And then we have Sato as the cool-headed, experienced detective. Murakami represents Japan's post-war identity crisis. He increasingly shows empathy with the perpetrator that he's supposed to be arresting, because he himself has once almost chosen the same destructive path. And Sato just as the smooth and cool detective, and for some reason, he doesn't seem to be affected by the heat like everyone else. You know, he's too cool for that. He represents the embodiment of the optimism that people needed to overcome the post-war chaos. And Takashi Shimura is just brilliant. You know, we see his charm just the second that we meet him. You know, he's just chatting it up with a female suspect, and they're just eating ice cream and kicking back. I also love his pimp hat and outfit. Suits him well. And then we have Toshiro Mifune, and even though he is young, you could still just see aspects of his brilliance. He really just captures a sense of panic. And it's interesting because he's a flawed cop, and you would never see that in an American film in the 40s.
Price is still $685.
How do you sleep at night, Fred?
Just fine, thanks.
And I love how Mifune could just act with his eyes alone. He doesn't need to say anything. And you could just feel everything that he's going through. His exhaustion, his guilt. It's all on full display through his face and acting. And you know, we really want to root for him. And the film really just does a great job of honestly depicting the poverty and crime of the time. You know, innuendos aren't used to get around the censors like American dramas were doing at the time.
And I don't have any boss.
Not even a wife, Mr. Castro?
And the film also does a great job at just showing how horrible this time period must have been. Families at this time were run on very small amounts of income. So, knowing that makes some scenes more impactful. Like the one where this grieving father is just ripping out his tomato plants. You know, you have to keep in mind that this was a country of people starving to death. So someone doing that is pretty shocking. So if you've been hesitating to get into Akira Kurosawa films because you don't really care for samurai, then Stray Dog and his other 3 crime films may be a better entry point, you know, to get you into his style. And with Stray Dog, you know, this director was still early in his career. But already he's just showing what a master he is. And I really found that the detective aspect of this film was just a lot of fun. And I was really going along with Sato and Murakami and just putting all the new leads and pieces together. You know, made it kind of fun, you know, just being like a detective. And it's a crime film that's able really to both capture the tropes of noir, but also expand the scope to social realism. Stray Dog really is just a perfect blend of both style and story about humanity. And also just fixing one's own mistake. You know, even if that means journeying through hell itself. And just the benefit of ridding the world of just one more bad guy. You know, it really makes you think. So if you're just a fan of the noir, crime, detective genre, then this film really is a must. I would really rank it amongst the best in the genre. So, you know, let me know in the comments what you think of this film. Do you enjoy Kurosawa's non-samurai films? And like always, thanks for watching.
Want a room?
No, I just came in to admire the decorations.